My name is Eloin Mercer, and for most of my life I believed that being a mother meant knowing when to hold on, and when to let go. My son Calder had always been my entire world. I raised him after his father left when he was 12. There were years when I worked 2 jobs just to keep our lives together. I wanted Calder to have everything I could give him, but I also knew that one day he would build a family of his own, and when that day came I wanted to let him go. Calder eventually married Maryse. She was intelligent, independent, and very protective of her personal life. At first I liked her, but I quickly noticed that she had very strong boundaries. She didn't like unexpected visits, she didn't like people giving her advice, and she especially didn't like anyone questioning her decisions. I understood that, so I stayed careful. If I wanted to visit, I called first. If Calder mentioned a problem at home, I didn't take sides. And when Maryse asked for more privacy, I gave it to her. I thought I was doing the right thing. Then one rainy afternoon, Calder called me. "Mom," his voice sounded excited. "What is it?" There was a short pause, then he said, "Going to be a grandmother." I sat down. I actually had to sit down. For years I had imagined hearing those words, but nothing prepared me for the feeling. I laughed, then I cried. "Calder," I could barely speak. "That's wonderful." He laughed. "Maryse is about 12 weeks along." I smiled. "Does she know you're calling me?" "Yes." "Then tell her I'm happy for both of you." I meant it. I was genuinely happy. For the next few weeks I tried to give them space. I didn't buy piles of baby clothes. I didn't start planning a nursery. I didn't ask which hospital they had chosen. I didn't even ask what they were naming the baby. I thought, if they wanted me to know, they would tell me. Then one evening, my phone rang. It was Maryse. "Eloin." Voice was cold. I immediately knew something was wrong. "Of course, what is it?" "I need to make something clear." I sat down. "Okay, you are not going to be involved in this pregnancy." I was stunned. "I'm not trying to be involved. I'm just happy for you." "That's not what I mean." Her voice became sharper. "You won't be at the hospital." I didn't respond. "You won't come to our house after the baby is born." My heart began beating faster. "And you will not meet my child unless I decide you're allowed to." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Maryse," I took a breath, "that's your decision. I won't force anything." There was silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Never meet your grandchild." The call ended. Just like that, I sat alone in my kitchen. My phone was still in my hand. I stared at the screen. I didn't understand. What had I done? I hadn't interfered. I hadn't criticized her. I hadn't even asked to be part of the pregnancy. I called Calder. He didn't answer. I called again the next morning. Nothing. Then several days passed. No calls, no messages, so I finally sent him one text. "Love you. I won't pressure you. If you need me, I'm here." He didn't respond, and that hurt more than I expected. Still, I stayed away. I told myself that perhaps this was simply the new reality. My son was building his own family. Maybe my place in his life had changed. Maybe I had to accept that, but there was something about Maryse's voice that I couldn't forget. She hadn't sounded angry, she had sounded afraid, and I couldn't figure out why. Months passed. I heard through a distant relative that the pregnancy was progressing well. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want anyone thinking I was trying to get information behind Maryse's back, so I waited. Then, late one Thursday night, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Man's voice responded. "Is this Eloin Mercer?" "Yes." "My name is Dr. Adrian Vaughan." He paused. "I'm calling from the hospital." My heart stopped. "Is Calder okay?" "Your son is fine." I took a breath. "Then why are you calling me?" There was another pause. "Because Maryse is here." Stood up immediately. "Is the baby okay?" "That's what we're trying to determine." My hands started shaking. "What happened, doctor?" Vaughan explained that Maryse had been brought to the emergency department. She was experiencing severe abdominal pain. Were complications with the pregnancy. The baby was still alive, but the situation was serious. Calder was on his way. He hadn't arrived yet. Then the doctor said something that confused me. "Your name was listed as an emergency contact." I frowned. "That can't be right. Maryse hasn't spoken to me in months." "I understand. Your name is on the hospital records." I didn't know what to say. Then he asked, "Are you able to come to the hospital?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." I grabbed my coat. And I drove through the rain, the entire way there. One question kept running through my mind. Why me? Why had Maryse listed me as her emergency contact? Why had she told me I'd never meet her child? And why was a doctor calling me, instead of her family, when I arrived at the hospital? Calder was standing outside the emergency room. He looked terrified the moment he saw me. He walked toward me. "Mom." I hugged him. He held on tightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have called you." I pulled back. "What happened?" "I don't know." His voice was shaking. "Everything happened so fast." He wiped his face. "Maryse collapsed at home." I looked at him. "What did the doctor say?" "They think there's a complication with the placenta." He swallowed. "Trying to stabilize her." I squeezed his shoulder. "I'm here." He nodded. A few minutes later, Dr. Vaughan came out. His expression was serious. "Calder, need to talk." We followed him into a small consultation room. He explained that Mary's was experiencing a dangerous pregnancy complication. She might require emergency surgery and the baby was in distress. There is a possibility we may have to deliver the baby tonight. Calder's face went pale, but she's only 31 weeks. I know, Doctor spoke carefully. We're doing everything possible to keep both of them safe. Then, he looked at me. There is another issue. My stomach tightened. What issue? Maris specifically requested that if something happened to her, and Calder was unavailable, should contact you. Calder looked at me. Mom, I shook my head. I didn't know, Doctor. Vaughan handed Calder a document. She completed an emergency contact and temporary care authorization several months ago. Calder read it silently, his eyes filled with tears. Why would she do this? I looked at the doctor. He didn't answer immediately. You should ask her. When she's stable. Hours passed, every minute felt like an hour. Finally, the surgery was successful. A tiny baby girl was delivered prematurely. She was immediately taken to the neonatal intensive care unit. Mary's survived the surgery, but she remained unconscious. Calder stood beside the NICU window. He stared at his daughter through the glass. She was tiny. Surrounded by machines, a small hat covered her head. She's beautiful. His voice cracked. I stood beside him. She is. He looked at me. Mom, I don't understand any of this. I looked through the glass. Neither do I. Early the next morning, Mary's finally woke up. Calder went into her room. I stayed outside. I didn't want to intrude after several minutes. Calder came out. Tears were running down his face. She wants to see you. I froze. Me. He nodded. I slowly walked into the room. Mary's looked exhausted. She could barely speak. Eloin, I stood near the doorway. I'm here. She looked at me for a long moment, then she whispered. I'm sorry, I didn't say anything. I was wrong. Eyes filled with tears. I thought you wanted to take my place. I shook my head. I never wanted your place. She closed her eyes. My mother died when I was young. Her voice trembled. My father disappeared. She took a breath. I was terrified. Terrified that when I had a baby, everyone would tell me how to raise her. I finally understood. Her anger hadn't really been about me. It had been about fear. I thought if I kept everyone away, nothing could hurt me. She looked toward me. But then, when the doctors told me there was a chance I could lose the baby, her voice broke. I realized I'd chosen the wrong person to push away. I walked closer. You didn't have to choose me. She looked at me. But I did. Then she said something I'll never forget. I put your name down because, deep down, I knew you'd protect my daughter. My eyes filled with tears. What's her name? Maris smiled weakly. I wanted to tell you before everything happened. She looked toward Calder. We named her Wren. I smiled. Wren, it was beautiful. A few days later, Wren's condition improved. She was still in the NICU, but the doctors were optimistic. Then Mary's asked me to come into the room. Would you like to see her? I nodded. She held my hand. We stood outside the glass, and there she was, my granddaughter, for the first time. I couldn't touch her, I couldn't hold her, but just seeing her was enough. Mary squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I told you you'd never meet her. I smiled sadly. You were scared. That doesn't excuse it. I looked at her. But it explains it. She looked at me. Will you forgive me? I thought about those months of silence, the cruel words. The way my heart had broken when she told me I would never meet my grandchild. Then I looked through the glass at tiny Wren. Maris began crying. Thank you, but I wasn't finished. Need you to promise me something too. She nodded. You're ever afraid of me? Tell me. Don't shut me out. Can talk. She nodded slowly. I promise. Over the next several weeks, our relationship changed completely. I didn't become the grandmother who took over. I didn't give Mary's advice unless she asked. I didn't tell her what she should do or what she shouldn't do. Instead, I became what she actually needed, someone who could listen without judging. When Wren finally came home, Mary's called me herself. Eloin, yes. Would you like to come meet your granddaughter? I smiled. I'd love to. When I arrived, Mary's opened the door. She was holding Wren. She carefully placed the baby in my arms. My hands trembled. I looked down at her tiny face. Hello, Wren. I whispered, been waiting for you. Maris stood beside me. She was smiling through tears, and in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes people build walls, not because they hate you, but because they're terrified of being hurt. And sometimes the greatest response isn't breaking those walls down, it's standing patiently on the other side, until they're ready to open the door themselves. Mary's once told me, never meet your grandchild. Months later, she placed that same child in my arms. And I learned something I will never forget. Family isn't about forcing your way into someone's life. It's about being the person they can finally trust. When life becomes frightening, sometimes, you don't have to fight for a place in someone's family. You simply have to remain kind, remain patient, and leave the door open, because sometimes, the person who told you to stay away will eventually be the person who opens the door and says, come in. And when that moment finally comes, you get to decide